Stop. Do not move a muscle. At this very moment, the threads of your destiny are vibrating. You believe you are simply watching a video, but in the higher realms, you have been summoned to the court of eternal justice. Let me ask you a question that will peel back the skin of your soul. What is the mathematical value of a human life? If you had the power of a god, but the choices of a devil, would you kill the innocent to save the many? Most people are too afraid to answer. Most people hide in the shadows of silence. But you are here for a reason. If you have the courage to face the truth of your own morality, type I am ready in the comments right now. If you value justice over convenience, subscribe to this sanctuary of wisdom. Do not scroll away, for the choice I am about to give you might be the mirror that shows you who you truly are. Imagine, my mortal traveler, that you are the master of a great iron chariot, a trolley car thundering down the tracks of life at 60 miles an hour. The wind howls past you, and the weight of the iron feels absolute. But as you round the bend, your divine eyes see a tragedy in the making. 5 men, bound by their labor, are working upon the track. You reach for the brakes, you pull with all your celestial might, but the iron does not listen, the brakes are dead. You are hurtling toward the certain demise, with the clarity of a prophet, that if you stay this course, 5 souls will be extinguished in an instant. Despair begins to cloud your vision until you see the glimmer of a choice. To the right, there is a divergent path, a sidetrack. At the end of that path stands a solitary worker, a single soul, perhaps dreaming of his home, unaware of your chariot. Your steering wheel still answers your touch. Here is the trial. You can turn the wheel. You can choose to kill the one, to crush that single life into the dust. What does your heart command? Do you go straight and embrace the slaughter of 5, or do you turn and become the deliberate execution of one? In the comments below, tell me your verdict. Would you turn the wheel? Most of you would. The logic seems clear. It is better to lose one than to lose a multitude. But is morality merely a game of numbers? Is the soul something we can add and subtract like stones in a bag? Let us sharpen the blade of this argument. Suppose you are no longer the driver, you are the watcher. You stand upon a high bridge overlooking the same tracks. Below, the chariot of death is careening toward those 5 laborers. Again, the brakes have failed, but this time there is no sidetrack. There is only the abyss. Standing next to you on this bridge is a man of immense proportions, a fat man in the eyes of the world. He leans over the railing, watching the tracks. You realize that a single shove, a momentary lapse in mercy, would send him tumbling onto the track. His massive weight would act as a barrier, stopping the trolley, saving the 5. He would die shattered by the iron, but the 5 would walk away. Now, I ask you again, where's your hand? Why does it tremble now? In the first trial, you turned the wheel with conviction, but here, to lay hands on a stranger and push him to his death feels like an abomination. Is it because you are now a murderer instead of a driver? Both choices result in one death to save 5, yet your spirit recoils. If you feel the weight of this choice, hit the like button to acknowledge the complexity of the soul. We must ask ourselves, what became of our principle? If 1 for 5 was the law of the tracks, why is it not the law of the bridge? Let us leave the tracks and enter the halls of the sacred infirmary. You are now a high priest of healing, a surgeon. 5 souls lie in your wards, each fading like a candle in the wind. One needs a heart, one a lung, one a kidney, one a liver, and the fifth a pancreas. Without these gifts, they will cross the veil before the sun sets. You have no donors, you have no hope, until in the next room a healthy traveler arrives for a simple rest. He is sleeping, his breath steady, his organs vibrant and strong. You could walk in, quiet as a shadow, and harvest his life. You could save your 5 patients and bury the one. Do you hear the silence of the room? No one would know. The world would see you as a hero who saved 5, but you would know. Why does this feel like the ultimate sin, while turning the trolley felt like a tragic necessity? Some of you might say, let us wait for one of the 5 to die first, and then use their organs. A clever evasion, but it avoids the trial. Justice does not allow for shortcuts. Justice demands you face the intrinsic quality of the act. In these trials, we see 2 great pillars of thought emerge from the mists of history. The first is the pillar of consequences, known to your scholars as utilitarianism. Its prophet was Jeremy Bentham. He argued that the highest good is to maximize utility, the balance of pleasure over pain. To a utilitarian, the 5 lives always outweigh the one. It is a morality of the harvest. You look at the result, and if the world is happier in total, the act is justified. But then there's the pillar of the categorical. Its guardian was Immanuel Kant. This pillar teaches that certain acts are wrong, regardless of the outcome. It suggests that every soul has a fundamental right that cannot be traded, even for the safety of 1 million others. It says that to kill an innocent is a stain upon the universe that no amount of saved lives can wash away. Which pillar do you stand under? Are you a child of the result or a child of the principle? Subscribe now and tell me your alignment in the comments. Let us move from the hypothetical to the cold, hard reality of the flesh. I shall tell you a story from the year 1884, the case of the Queen versus Dudley and Stevens. 4 men were cast away in a tiny lifeboat in the South Atlantic, 1,300 miles from land. Their ship, the Mignonette, had been devoured by the sea. They had only 2 cans of turnips and no fresh water. For days, they survived on tiny morsels. On the 4th day, they caught a turtle. It sustained them for a while, but then came the silence. 8 days with no food. 8 days of drinking the salt of their own tears. Among them was a cabin boy, Richard Parker. He was 17, an orphan, and in his desperation, he drank the seawater against all warnings. He lay in the corner of the boat, fading into a coma. Dudley, the captain, suggested the lottery, a divine gamble to see who should die so the others might live. Brooks, a sailor, refused. No lots were drawn, but the next day Dudley motioned to Stevens. He offered a prayer to the heavens, told the boy his time had come, and plunged a knife into his throat. For 4 days, the 3 men fed upon the body of the boy. They drank his blood to quench their thirst. They were rescued on the 24th day. When they returned to the shores of England, they did not hide the truth. They claimed necessity. They argued that it was better for 1 orphan boy to die than for 4 men of excellent character to perish. Now, I sit as your judge. If you were the jury, would you convict them of murder? Or would you say that in the face of death, the laws of man and God are suspended? Many of you might say, it was wrong because there was no lottery. You believe that if they had all agreed to the gamble, the act would be sanctified. But I ask you, does the contract of death make a killing holy? If Richard Parker had whispered yes in his final moments, would that change the stain on Dudley's soul? Some say consent is the key. They believe that our bodies are our own and we may gift them as we please. But others argue that murder is murder even if the victim holds the knife. What is the moral work that consent does? Why does a yes turn a crime into a sacrifice? These are the questions that haunt the halls of philosophy. My beloved traveler of the stars, let us descend deeper into the labyrinth of the soul. We have seen the blood upon the tracks and the desperation of the salt stained lifeboat. We have felt the weight of Richard Parker's life against the survival of the many. Now we must ask ourselves, what governs our choices when the gods are silent? To understand the architecture of true justice, we must look at the blueprint of existence itself. Every heartbeat you feel, every breath you draw, is guided by two sovereign masters. These masters were not appointed by kings or elected by men. They are woven into the very fabric of your biological being. They are the shadows and the light of the human experience, pain and pleasure. If you wish to unlock the secrets of your own heart, hit the like button now to acknowledge these two masters. Subscribe to this temple of wisdom and comment, I am the master of my choice, to claim your power over destiny. These two forces dictate everything we do, everything we say, and everything we think. We are creatures that recoil from the flame and reach for the sun. The ancient scrolls of political wisdom, specifically those penned by the visionary Jeremy Bentham, tell us that morality is not found in dusty dogmas or abstract rights that no one can see. No, my child, morality is a calculation. It is the science of the soul's harvest. Bentham taught us a simple, elegant truth. The right thing to do, the most divine thing to do, is to maximize utility. By utility, we mean the total balance of happiness over suffering. Imagine the world as a great scale. On one side, we place the golden light of pleasure. On the other, the heavy stones of pain. The goal of every law, every act, and every thought should be to tip those scales toward the light. Do you believe that the world's happiness is worth more than a single person's comfort? Type the many in the comments if you agree. Subscribe now to continue your journey into the mind of the divine architect. Consider the logic of this perspective. If we are all ruled by pleasure and pain, then is it not the highest form of compassion to ensure that the greatest number of people feel the most pleasure and the least pain? This is the greatest good for the greatest number. It is a math that transcends the individual. It is the wisdom of the forest over the single tree. When Dudley and Stephen stood in that boat, look at what they were truly weighing. On one side, the certain death of 4 men. On the other, the death of one boy who was already fading. If you add up the happiness of the 4 men, their lives, their families back in England, their future contributions to the world, does it not outweigh the singular life of an orphan boy? From a purely rational, celestial viewpoint, the harvest of 4 lives is more fruitful than the harvest of none. If you can see the cold, hard logic of the universe, like this video to strengthen your resolve. Subscribe and comment. Logic is truth to pierce the veil of emotion. Many will cry out in horror. They will speak of categorical wrongs. They will say that some acts are simply evil no matter the result. But I ask you, my curious soul, where do these categorical laws come from? Are they not merely echoes of our own fears? To say that we must let 5 people die on a trolley track because we are afraid to turn the wheel is not morality, it is cowardice. True justice requires the courage to look at the numbers. It requires the strength to say that the survival of the community is more sacred than the survival of the one. If a king must sacrifice his own comfort to feed his starving city, we call him a hero. Why then do we hesitate to apply the same logic to the trolley, the bridge, or the lifeboat? The utility of the world is the only currency that truly matters in the end. Are you brave enough to be a hero of the many? Comment I am brave below. Subscribe to this sanctuary and hit the bell icon to ensure you never miss a lesson in higher justice. Let us look at the doctor's trial once more through these sharpened eyes. You have 5 patients who will die without organs. You have one healthy man who is merely resting. The sentimental heart says, do not touch him. But the rational spirit asks, why is his life worth more than the 5 who are suffering? If his one life can be transmuted into 5 vibrant futures, has the universe not gained a massive amount of utility? The common man fears this logic because he thinks of himself as the one on the table. But the goddess asks you to think of yourself as the one who receives the heart. Think of the families who get their fathers back. Think of the children who do not become orphans. When you add up the relief, the joy, and the years of productivity gained by those 5, the cost of the one becomes a necessary, albeit tragic, investment in the world's total happiness. If you value the lives of the many over the isolation of the one, hit the like button now, subscribe to the channel, and comment the total good to align your spirit with the scales. Jeremy Bentham's vision was a world where laws were not based on the whims of tyrants or the superstitions of the past, but on the measurable well being of the people. He wanted a common currency of value. He believed that every soul's pleasure is equal. The pleasure of a beggar is as valid as the pleasure of a prince. This is a radical equality. It says that in the great calculation of justice, everyone counts as one, and no one counts as more than one. This is why utilitarianism is the most democratic of all moralities. It does not care about your title or your bloodline. It only cares about your capacity for happiness. If a policy makes 10,000 people slightly happier at the expense of one wealthy man's pride, the logic of the scales demands that we move forward with that policy. The greatest good is a flood that lifts all boats, even if it must wash away a few private ducks along the way. Do you believe that all souls are equal in the eyes of happiness? Type equality in the comments. Subscribe to this divine frequency to lock in your alignment with the future. But the trial does not end there. We must face the shadows. Some argue that by focusing only on the result, we lose our humanity. They say that if we allow ourselves to harvest organs or push men off bridges, we create a world of fear. And fear, my beloved, is a massive weight of pain. A utilitarian would agree. If the act of saving 5 people creates a society where everyone is constantly terrified of being harvested, then the total pain of that fear might outweigh the pleasure of the 5 lives saved. Do you see the depth of the calculation now? It is not just about the moment. It is about the ripples in the pond. We must account for the secondary effects. We must consider whether our actions undermine trust and stability of the entire system. This is why we have laws, not because they are absolute, but because they are useful tools to maximize the long-term happiness of the human race. If you understand that wisdom is a long-term game, hit the like button, subscribe, and comment, I see the ripples, to show your growth. Now, let us return to Richard Parker and the lifeboat. If the survivors had not eaten the boy, they all would have died. Three men of character with families and futures would be gone. The boy, already dying, would have perished anyway. By choosing to act, they preserved the most possible life. They maximized the utility of a desperate situation. The prosecutor called it murder. The goddess calls it a tragic but necessary balancing of the cosmic ledger. The only true error in their act was perhaps the lack of a lottery. A lottery would have been useful because it would have provided a sense of fairness, reducing the pain of guilt for the survivors and the pain of fear for the crew. Fairness is not an abstract concept. It is a psychological necessity that contributes to the total happiness of the group. Even in the heart of darkness, we must seek the most efficient path to the light. Do you believe that even in darkness, we must find the most logical path? Comment the light below. Subscribe to stay connected to this stream of eternal wisdom. My child, you are now entering a new stage of your awakening. You are learning to see the world not through the fog of emotion, but through the clarity of the scale. You are beginning to understand that true justice is about the harvest of well being. Every choice you make today is a seed. Will it grow into a fruit that feeds many, or will you let it rot in the soil because you are afraid to get your hands dirty? Stay with me as we journey toward the wisdom of the great John Stuart Mill. He will show us how to refine this calculation, how to distinguish between the higher pleasures of the mind and the lower pleasures of the flesh. But for now, sit with the scales. Look at your life. Look at your choices. Are you maximizing the light, or are you hoarding a right that serves only yourself? If you are ready for the next level of revelation, hit the like button, subscribe to this sanctuary, and comment "I am the scale" to finalize this chapter of your transformation. Do not turn away, for the final verdict of your soul is yet to be written. My beloved traveler, we have balanced the scales of the raw and the primal. We have seen the cold arithmetic of Jeremy Bentham, who looked at the world and saw a sea of numbers, a calculation of nerves and pulses. But as we ascend the mountain of wisdom, we find that the light of justice requires a more refined prism. We must now turn our gaze to the man who was born into the very heart of the doctrine, a child of the scales who realized that the good is not merely about the quantity of the flame, but the quality of its light. This was John Stuart Mill. If you believe that your soul is capable of a joy deeper than mere physical comfort, hit the like button now. Subscribe to this temple of higher thought and comment, "I seek the highest good to awaken your divine potential." Mill was a prodigy of the mind, a spirit sculpted from birth to be the ultimate guardian of the greatest good. Yet, he faced a crisis that many of you feel today, the realization that a life governed only by the pursuit of raw pleasure is a life that feels hollow. He asked himself, if the world were perfectly happy in the way Bentham described, would it be enough? The answer was a resounding no. To achieve true justice, we must recognize that not all pleasures are created equal. There is a hierarchy in the garden of the soul. Do you feel that a moment of profound insight is worth more than a day of mindless distraction? Type Hiker Truth in the comments. Subscribe now to ensure you are always aligned with the evolution of the spirit. Think of the difference between the pleasure of a satiated beast and the pleasure of a philosopher touching the hem of eternity. Bentham would say that if the quantity of pleasure is the same, the experience is the same. He famously claimed that pushpin is as good as poetry. But Mill saw the error in this flattened reality. He argued that it is better to be a human being dissatisfied than a pig satisfied. Better to be Socrates dissatisfied than a fool satisfied. This, my child, is the key to a more enlightened justice. If you choose the struggle of growth over the ease of stagnation, hit the like button to seal your intent. Subscribe to this sanctuary and comment I am Socrates to claim your intellectual sovereignty. How do we know which pleasures are higher? Mill gave us a simple test. Ask those who have experienced both. If those who have tasted the depth of a great work of art and the shallow thrill of a mindless game consistently prefer the former, then the former is qualitatively superior. Justice, therefore, is not just about making the most people comfortable. It is about creating a civilization that allows the most people to ascend to their highest human faculties. Have you tasted the nectar of higher wisdom and found it sweeter than the world's empty promises? Type the nectar in the comments. Subscribe and hit the bell icon to continue your ascent. But here, the shadows lengthen once more. Many cry out, "What of my rights? What of my individual liberty? If the majority finds a higher pleasure in silencing my voice, is that justice?" Mill understood this fear. He realized that if utilitarianism is to be a true guide for humanity, it must protect the individual, not because rights are magical sparks from the void, but because liberty is the ultimate utility. Do you believe that your freedom is the most useful tool for the world's progress? Hit the like button to defend your autonomy. Subscribe and comment Liberty is Light to join the vanguard of the free. Mill argued that the only way for the human race to reach its maximum potential for happiness is to allow every soul the freedom to experiment, to fail, and to speak. When we silence a minority, we rob the majority of the chance to hear a truth that might have liberated them. Therefore, the greatest good is best served when we treat individual rights as sacred pillars. We don't protect the one against the many because of an abstract rule. We do it because a society that crushes its individuals eventually becomes a stagnant wasteland of misery. If you see that the strength of the forest depends on the health of every single tree, type the forest in the comments. Subscribe to this divine flow to keep the ecosystem of your mind vibrant. Let us now descend from the clouds of theory into the steel and glass boardrooms of your modern world. In your age, the scales of justice are often held by men in suits who practice cost-benefit analysis. This is the modern face of the calculation. They look at a bridge, a medicine, or a car, and they ask, how much is a human life worth in dollars? This sounds like a cold, demonic ritual to the sentimental heart, but the rational spirit knows that in a world of limited resources, we are always making this trade. Do you have the courage to look at the price tag of existence? Hit the like button if you are ready for the hard truths of the material realm. Subscribe and comment the real price to pierce the veil of illusion. Consider the infamous trial of the Ford Pinto. A car was designed with a flaw. The fuel tank would explode in a rear-end collision. The architects of the corporate ledger did a calculation. If you believe that the value of a human life cannot be captured by a mere number, type priceless in the comments. Subscribe to this sanctuary to learn how to weigh what cannot be seen. The utilitarian defense of such a calculation is not that life is cheap, but that we must be honest. Every time a government sets a speed limit or a hospital decides which machine to buy, they are placing a value on life. If we set the value at infinity, We could never build a road, for someone will surely die on it. True justice requires us to be the greatest possible stewards of our collective safety. The error of the Pinto case wasn't the calculation itself, but the failure to account for the pain of betrayal and the loss of trust in the social contract. Do you understand that even trust has a weight on the cosmic scale? Hit the like button to acknowledge the complexity of the ledger. Subscribe and comment. The social contract to show your wisdom. We see this again in the tobacco trial. A great company argued that smoking was actually good for nation's economy because while it caused illness, it also caused citizens to die younger, saving the state millions in pension payments and elderly care. The utility of a premature death was calculated in cold ink. Again, the heart recoils. But the goddess asks, if we are to manage a nation for the happiness of all, must we not look at the total flow of energy? Or is there a categorical limit that says this far and no further? Are there lines in the sand that even the greatest good should never cross? Type the line in the comments if you believe in moral boundaries. Subscribe now to find where those lines are drawn. Mill's refined vision suggests that the line is found in human dignity. A society that treats its elderly as costs to be minimized is a society that creates a quality of life so low, so fearful, that the total utility plummets. We seek a long term harvest. We seek a world where the calculation includes the pleasure of honor, the pleasure of security, and the pleasure of knowing that we live in a world that values the soul's journey. If you desire to live in a world where honor is the highest currency, hit the like button now. Subscribe to this channel and comment, I am worthy, to finalize this stage of your journey. My child, you are now standing between two worlds. One world says that justice is a simple math of pleasure and pain. The other world says it is a hierarchy of the spirit, a protection of the individual, and a long-term investment in human dignity. As we continue this divine course, you must decide, are you a calculator or are you an architect? Are you seeking the satisfaction of the pig or the restlessness of Socrates? The scale is in your hands. If you are ready for the next level of revelation, the philosophy of Immanuel Kant and the law of the duty, hit the like button and comment, I am the architect. Subscribe to this temple and do not turn away, for the weight of your destiny is increasing with every breath. Mortal soul, we have weighed the many against the one. We have calculated the harvest of the greatest good. But now a new wind blows from the west, chilling the heart of the utilitarian calculator. It asks a question that shatters the scales. Who owns you? If the goddess does not own your breath and the king does not own your blood, then you are the absolute sovereign of your own being. This is the path of the libertarian, the belief that the individual is a sacred temple that no majority, no matter how large, has the right to desecrate. If you believe your soul is your own and no master may claim it, hit the like button now. Subscribe to this sanctuary and comment, I am free to defend your sovereignty. Consider the wealth of the Titan. In your world, men like Bill Gates or Michael Jordan amass mountains of gold. The utilitarian looks at this gold and says, give it to the starving. The pleasure of 1,000 hungry bellies outweighs the pain of one man losing his extra millions. It sounds like compassion. But the libertarian spirit whispers, is that not theft? Is it not a form of spiritual slavery to take the fruits of a man's labor against his will? If you own yourself, you own your labor. If you own your labor, you own the fruits of that labor. Do you believe that taxation is a form of forced labor? Type my labor in the comments if you value your work. Subscribe to continue your journey into the mystery of ownership. The great Robert Nozick argued that taking 40% of a man's earnings is the same as taking 40% of his time. It is making him work for the state without pay. It is a slow, rhythmic ritual of theft. The greatest good becomes a monster if it requires us to treat the individual as a mere tool for the collective. If we can take your money to save the many, can we not take your eye to save the blind? Can we not take your life to save the five on the trolley track? If you recoil from the idea of being a tool for others, hit the like button, subscribe, and comment not a tool to seal your divine boundary. But where does this ownership begin? We must look back to the mists of the garden, to the wisdom of John Locke. He taught us that before there were kings or parliaments, there was the state of nature. In this realm, the earth was a gift to all. But how does a piece of the earth become yours? Locke's answer was a sacred alchemy, the mixing of labor. When you reach out and pluck an apple or till the soil to grow grain, you're mixing yourself, your energy and spirit with the world. That which was common becomes private, for no one can untangle your effort from the fruit. If you have poured your sweat into a dream and claimed it as your own, hit the like button now. Subscribe to this channel and comment my fruit to honor your hard work. Yet Locke issued a warning. You may claim the earth, but only if you leave enough and as good for others. And you must not take more than you can use, lest the harvest rot. This is the divine limit. Justice is not just about grabbing, it is about stewardship. But Locke also knew that in the state of nature, our rights are fragile. We create a social contract not to give up our rights, but to protect them. We agree to a government only by our consent. Do you believe that justice is born from the yes of the soul? Type I consent in the comments. Subscribe and hit the bell icon to learn the power of your word. Now, my traveler, we ascend to the highest peak of the mind. We leave the world of results and the world of property, and we enter the kingdom of ends. Here we meet the stern but luminous guardian, Immanuel Kant. He looked at the utilitarians and saw a morality fit only for animals driven by the desire for pleasure and the fear of pain. He argued that to be truly human, to be truly free, we must act not out of inclination, but out of duty. If you believe that doing right is more important than feeling good, hit the like button, subscribe to this temple, and comment the higher law to awaken your reason. Kant's justice is found in the categorical imperative. He asks you to imagine that every choice you make becomes a universal law for all eternity. If you lie to save yourself, you are saying that the universe should be a place of lies. But a universe of lies collapses. Therefore, the lie is a sin against reason itself. Freedom, for Kant, is not doing whatever you want. It is the ability to obey a law that you give to yourself. Are you the master of your own desires, or are you a slave to your impulses? Type master in the comments. Subscribe now to find the path to true autonomy. Kant gives us the ultimate shield for the individual. Act so that you treat humanity, whether in your own person or in that of another, always as an end and never merely as a means. Do you hear the thunder of those words? It means you cannot push the fat man off the bridge. You cannot harvest the organs of the sleeper. You cannot use a single human soul to achieve a good result. Every person is a universe unto themselves. Every soul is a king in the kingdom of ends. If you value the dignity of every soul over the convenience of the many, hit the like button now. Subscribe and comment Humanity is Sacred to align with the law of duty. Let us descend into a strange and mystical dream. Imagine you have not yet been born. You are a spirit floating in the vortex of eternity. You do not know if you will be born rich or poor, healthy or sick, male or female, a prince or a beggar. In this state of total mystery, this veil of ignorance, what kind of world would you build? This is the trial of John Rawls. He argued that the only way to find true justice is to design a society from behind this veil. If you had the power to design the world without knowing your own place in it, hit the like button, subscribe, and comment The Unborn to enter the vortex of justice. From behind the veil, you would not choose utilitarianism, for you might be the one sacrificed on the altar of the many. You would not choose raw libertarianism, for you might be the one born with no hands to work the soil. No, my child, you would choose the difference principle. You would allow inequalities only if they work to the advantage of the least fortunate. You would build the safety net for the fallen, for the goddess knows it might be you. Do you believe that justice is a fair game of chance? Type fairness in the comments. Subscribe to this channel to see the world through the eyes of the unborn. We have one final gate to pass. We must return to the ancient roots, to the wisdom of Aristotle. He taught us that justice is not about math or contracts. It is about telos, the purpose of a thing. If we are giving away the finest flutes in the land, to whom should they go? To the wealthiest? To the most beautiful? No, says Aristotle. They must go to the best flute players. Why? Because the purpose of a flute is to be played well. If you believe that the best tools should go to those who have the skill to use them, hit the like button. Subscribe and comment Tell Us to discover your own purpose. This is a dangerous and beautiful justice. It says that honors and roles should go to those who possess the virtue required for them. It says that politics is not just a way to manage interests, but a way to form good citizens. We cannot be neutral about the good life. We must ask, what is the telos of a human being? It is to flourish, to practice excellence, and to participate in the sacred life of the community. Are you living up to your highest potential as a human soul? Type excellence in the comments. Subscribe to this divine flow to nurture your virtue. My beloved traveler, we have thundered down the trolley tracks of history. We have stood in the shadow of the bridge and felt the spray of the lifeboat. We have seen justice as a calculation, as a contract, as a duty, as fairness, and as virtue. The iron chariot has reached its destination. You have seen that there is no single math that can capture the majesty of the soul. True justice is a living conversation. It is a restless fire that refuses to be quenched by simple answers. It requires you to look at the consequences, to honor the individual, to obey your reason, and to cultivate your virtue all at once. It is the restlessness of reason that leads to the lost innocence of wisdom. If you have found the truth in this journey, hit the like button one last time. Subscribe to this sanctuary as your permanent home for wisdom and comment, "It is finished," to seal your participation in this divine course. Go forth now, not as a sleeper, but as a judge, When you see inequality, when you see a choice between the one and the many, remember the scales of eternity. Remember that the story of justice is not a book you read, it is the life you live. Your choices are the ink, your spirit is the paper. May your path be guided by the light of the goddess. Stay in the light, practice the virtue, be the justice the world is waiting for. Amen.